So I was problem. That's going to make a silly mistake and I'm now back in the game.
We're here in 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 on an ordinary Sunday to visit a family as they go about their weekend routine. But ordinary life has not come so easily for 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 and her son John.
So this is just our mixing process. It takes about 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours?
Yeah, and then it takes another 5.5 to 6 hours to actually infuse. So it's quite a commitment. This is our Sunday every second week, except I'm normally in pajamas.
This is a story about life-saving medical treatment, but it's also a story about parents fighting to keep their children alive.
This medicine keeps his heart functioning, it keeps him breathing, it keeps all of his muscle functioning properly. This stuff is like liquid gold for us. It's like liquid life.
John was very young when Kelly realized he was facing serious health problems.
I think I knew from about the time he was 10 days old, was the first time he had a significant choking episode. And I could see other children were a lot more active than he was, and they were definitively reaching their gross motor milestones easier.
By the time John was 11 months old, he had a diagnosis. He has Pompe disease, one of a group of rare genetic diseases called lysosomal storage disorders.
If you combine them, they have an incidence of around about 1 in 5,000 to 1 in 6,000 live births.
Professor Chris Forster is the director of the Centre for Human Metabolomics at Northwest University in Potchefstroom.
In South Africa, around about 150 to 200 babies are born per annum with a lysosomal storage disease.
These diseases involve a shortage in the enzymes that break down substances in our cells. Symptoms depend on which enzyme is lacking.
It results in an accumulation of glycogen in the muscle, and that essentially means that all the cardiac, epithelial and smooth muscle in his body doesn't work correctly.
The symptoms and signs become worse and worse as time goes on and may in a very, very severe way affect the quality of life.
Most patients with severe Pompe disease die before their second birthday, but Kelly fought for a life-saving treatment for Jean. Enzyme replacement therapy, a synthetic version of the missing enzyme.
If I could define future in a droplet, that's what it felt like for us.
Does it bother you at all that you're going to have to be dependent on this treatment for the rest of your life?
No, it doesn't bother me. It's like a little brother. You won't leave you alone, so you must live with it now.
The treatment doesn't cure his disease, but dramatically slows its progression and has given Jean a normal life.
I play soccer, cricket and rugby. And
Wow,
a bit
impressive.
of hockey.
You feel like a normal kid?
Yes, 100% a normal child.
We're not acutely sick anymore. We have chronic illness, and the critical thing is that he's not a burden to the state, he's not a burden to social services.
But the treatment is astronomically expensive. 1 month's supply costs over 500,000 rand. Medical aid covers the cost for Jean's infusions, but not everyone is that lucky.
We got you. When he learns something new, you're almost like, okay, but for how long? How long is he going to be able to do this before it's taken away from him?
Missionary and Jacques de Wet are parents to busy 3-year-old Zachary. Last year, Zachary was diagnosed with a lysosomal storage disorder called Hunter syndrome.
But I think once we got that diagnosis, sorry, it's life-changing. To everyone else, he seems healthy, but he's got 2 leaking heart valves. He's got delays in his development. As a mom, you don't have kids and think, you know, this is going to be your journey.
Missionary and Jacques are fighting desperately to access enzyme replacement therapy for their son.
We've been jumping through hoops and filling out forms, and they just, every time, just send you this letter with this fancy jargon on it, and basically at the end of the day, it's just to say no.
They can't afford the cost, over 100,000 rand a month, and without treatment, Zachary's health is declining.
If his heart starts deteriorating more, there's nothing you can do. If his cognitive ability starts to deteriorate and he ends up not knowing how to walk, not knowing how to communicate, not knowing how to eat.
Currently, he's looking at a life expectancy of 10 to 20 years, depending on how fast his disease progresses. If he gets his treatment now, he can live to 40, 50 years. I mean, that's worth fighting for.
One of my own personal dreams is to one day become a mom. And I can't imagine that dream coming true, then being told that my child is suffering from a rare disease, finding out that there is treatment for that disease, but I can't access it. Life-threatening lysosomal storage disorders are prescribed minimum benefit conditions. That is, conditions for which all medical aid schemes must generally fund treatment.
It's not as simple as it's a PMB, it has to be covered. The regulations allow medical schemes to apply efficacy, evidence-based guidelines, health economic guidelines, and consider affordability.
Dr. 𝗀𝗫𝗄𝗧 Patel is the head of health systems strengthening at the Board of Healthcare Funders, which represents the majority of South Africa's private medical schemes.
There's infinite needs, but there's finite resources, and that finite resources need to be managed for servicing everybody out there.
These are rare diseases. Is it really going to dent them that much?
It can be. So you've got medical schemes of different sizes. You can't get to a scenario where meeting the one person's need results in that complete plan, say, losing all the money it has. And then you don't have money to pay for any claims for the rest of the population.
Challenging a medical aid's decision is an arduous process. First, the scheme's internal appeal process must be exhausted. Then the patient may approach the Council for Medical Schemes. In 2014, Kelly founded Rare Diseases South Africa, which has represented 17 patients with these disorders at the Council.
We have never lost a legal challenge. Never. Every single case that has been put forward through the regulator has been awarded in our favour. But sometimes it takes us 3 years. And in that 3 years, I mean, last year, at the end of last year, we had a case go forward. In the time that we argued that case, the child lost his ability to walk and talk.
It just seems to us that medical aid schemes are very cynical because they go and appeal these decisions, even once patients have won.
It's very difficult for me to comment on those without seeing the specifics. But to me, it's quite clear, if affordability is your reason for not funding, then demonstrate the volatility on the claims, the impact it would have on the reserves of that fund and on the contributions going into the future. There's no such a thing that is unaffordable, so you get zero. There is a certain amount that you can contribute towards, and that's what they need to determine.
I've quite frequently asked medical aids, where's your analysis on why you can't afford it? But either they're not sharing this or it doesn't exist. And I'm not picking on any particular medical aid here. I'm referring to every decision maker that denies a child access to life-saving therapy without having made absolutely sure that there's no way to afford it.
The Council for Medical Schemes, which regulates private medical aid schemes in South Africa, refused our invitation for an on-camera interview about why these patients continue to be forced through lengthy hearings and appeal processes just to get access to treatment. The regulator even declined to respond to our questions in writing, saying internal processes prevented engagement on the matter. Not being able to get the funding for the treatment that he needs, is that a slow death?
And it's a hard death. I can't imagine myself going through it, let alone watching my child go through it.
𝗀𝗃𝗔𝗓 knows that heartbreaking journey all too well. Her son Crescendo was diagnosed with Hunter syndrome when he was 2.
He would just sit on the stoop and watch other kids play. He couldn't live his life to the fullest as a child.
When Crescendo was 14, 𝗀𝗃𝗔𝗓 got a job with a medical aid benefit, and he was approved for a 6-month trial on enzyme replacement therapy.
It was like a miracle, and we could visibly see changes.
What kinds of changes?
His hands, he could grip. His breathing improved. His mobility, he had more energy.
But then 𝗀𝗃𝗔𝗓 changed jobs, and her new medical aid was not so sympathetic.
She took the same steps, applying for the treatment, sending them motivation from the doctors. And at this point, he was at an age where he understood exactly what was happening.
Treatment withdrawn, 𝗀𝗃𝗔𝗓 looked on helplessly as the disease accelerated.
He's now battling to walk from the bathroom to the kitchen to eat. It was like the same nightmare, but just 10 times worse.
Crescendo was admitted to hospital with heart failure and passed away last year, aged just 16.
One of the doctors called and she said, he's just not responding. And that's when I had to make a decision and decide when we'd have to switch off the life support.
Rare diseases affect as many as 400 million people worldwide. But for many of these patients, they're isolated, poorly understood, and very vulnerable. That should make them the people we work harder to protect. But very often, their stories don't turn out like that.